I think we're just collateral damage, because if you look at the US beef industry, they're the largest in the world.
Over $5 billion in beef and pork orders have vanished almost overnight, delivering a devastating blow to American ranchers. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a massive, sudden hit. Entire shiploads of US meat were turned away at major Asian ports, stamped with a brutal message, "Return to sender." The fallout was swift and painful. And while American producers reeled from the shock, Canadian meat processors quietly celebrated a monumental breakthrough. In the very same week that the US lost billions, Canadian suppliers secured a historic contract nearly equal in value. Their iconic maple leaf logo began appearing on restaurant menus stretching from Tokyo's upscale Ginza district to the vibrant streets of Seoul's Gangnam. Back in the United States, the consequences hit the consumer hard. The price of ground beef jumped by $1.90 per tray in just days. Bacon approached the once unthinkable threshold of $10 per pound. And supermarket chains issued grim warnings. Groceries across the country may climb another 15% in cost before Labor Day arrives. What caused such a drastic and sudden economic flip? Why did Washington's aggressive tariff strategy collapse so spectacularly, opening the door for Canada to quietly steal America's meat market dominance across the Pacific? And more importantly, what does this international trade realignment mean for American dinner tables and the future of US agriculture? Tonight, we trace the path of each rejected steak, spotlight the hidden vulnerabilities within America's vast supply chain, and uncover how one overlooked policy directive has the potential to cripple an entire $200 billion farm economy. This isn't just a trade story, it's a wake-up call. Because by the time we're done, you may start to wonder whether the US still controls its own food supply. The chain reaction began quietly on March 27, 2023. Without fanfare, Tokyo reversed a 20-year-old restriction on Canadian processed beef, unlocking a $518 million Canadian export opportunity to some of Asia's wealthiest and most discerning consumers. What began as a cautious reopening has since exploded into a high-speed pipeline. By May 2025, Statistics Canada reported a 13.1% surge in meat exports to Japan, a figure that confirmed the shift wasn't a blip, it was a new economic reality. Tokyo's policy reversal dominated Asian business headlines, and within weeks, steakhouses from Osaka to Okinawa swapped their chalkboard menus that once flaunted USDA Prime with proud new signs featuring "Product of Canada." This shift didn't occur in a vacuum. It was directly fueled by growing instability south of the 49th parallel. In April, China escalated its ongoing trade war with Washington, slapping a punishing 125% tariff on all incoming US beef. The impact was immediate and widespread. In cities like Beijing and Shanghai, major barbecue chains had no choice but to drop Texas brisket from their menus and replace it with more affordable Canadian alternatives. Meanwhile, the once busy shipping containers stamped Nebraska Choice were returning home half full, while Asian cold storage warehouses brimmed with red and white cartons shipped from Manitoba and Alberta. Behind the scenes, industry lobbyists in Washington began sounding alarms. If Beijing follows through on threats to let nearly 1,000 US meat export licenses expire this summer, the result could be catastrophic. The backlog of unsold product wouldn't just hurt ranchers, it could cause a cascading supply chain crisis with national repercussions. Canada, sensing opportunity in the chaos, has moved aggressively. Livestock producers in Manitoba, long dependent on US buyers, now see America as too unstable. They're proactively finalizing deals with importers in South Korea and the Philippines, hoping to establish more reliable export channels before Washington triggers another trade volley. In fact, Reuters reports that some Canadian farms are taking matters into their own hands, installing on-site refrigeration units so foreign buyers can load meat directly from Winnipeg, bypassing the US border entirely and dodging every fee or tariff that Washington might impose next. If this workaround becomes standard, US grocery stores may soon find themselves paying Canadian brokers for the same meat that once came directly from Iowa, an astonishing reversal of roles in the North American food economy. The domino effect extends even further. On March 5, 2025, the US Meat Export Federation issued a sobering report. Pork exports in 2024 consumed a staggering 100.7 million bushels of domestic soybeans, injecting $1.12 billion into rural farming communities. Those meat shipments also added an average of 59 cents to every bushel of corn sold, bonuses that helped countless Midwest farmers survive a punishing season marked by relentless drought and skyrocketing diesel prices. But that fragile cash cushion is already eroding. Just 10 days after that report, on March 14, China made an ominous move, signaling that it may allow export licenses for up to 1,000 U.S. meat processing facilities to lapse. Panicked buyers across Asia immediately pivoted to Canada, terrified of unexpected port rejections and the logistical chaos they would bring. Chicago commodities traders now warned that if even half of those Chinese meat orders vanish, soybean demand could nosedive by as much as 50 million bushels. That's not a small shift, it's enough to eliminate the entire pricing premium earned by U.S. soybean growers in 2024. Corn producers aren't immune either. Losing 59 cents per bushel might seem negligible in isolation, but scaled across projected 2025 acreage, it represents nearly $3 billion in lost crop value. It's a gut punch to a sector already operating on thin margins and unpredictable weather patterns. So where does this leave us? A single decision in Tokyo triggered a market floodgate. A few policy maneuvers in Beijing added fuel to the fire. And a poorly calculated trade war response from Washington sent American meat and grain exports tumbling off a cliff. Tonight, we're not just watching a geopolitical chess match, we're watching a dramatic reshuffling of who feeds the Pacific Rim. And if the trend continues, your next backyard cookout might include beef that was raised in Alberta, processed in Winnipeg, and sold in Chicago, at prices set in Tokyo. The most important question now isn't about trade. It's about sovereignty. Is the United States still in control of its own dinner? That economic math is setting off alarm bells across Iowa's agricultural cooperatives, many of which are already grappling with increasingly tight credit conditions and dwindling financial flexibility. At the same time, ranchers in Manitoba are receiving a wave of forward contracts, offers denominated in Canadian dollars that not only provide a stable price but also guarantee precious cargo space on vessels bound for key Asian markets. These are the same shipping arrangements that American feedlots once relied on without a second thought. If this logistical and contractual shift becomes entrenched before the arrival of the first hard frost, U.S. grain elevators could be facing a grim October. They may open their gates to a flood of soybeans and corn with no clear outbound path. Without buyers or infrastructure to move the surplus, this glut could trigger a fire sale scenario eerily similar to the price collapse seen during the 2018 tariff standoff. Farmers and grain handlers refer to this looming crisis as the second blow, right on the heels of a supply chain punch that has already left them staggering. All of it traces back to one seemingly distant issue: pallets of U.S. beef being turned away at foreign ports. What was intended as a strategic trade move aimed at pressuring geopolitical rivals has instead rebounded sharply, wreaking havoc across the very agricultural commodities that underpin the American livestock sector. A once dependable source of export revenue now threatens to morph into an unsellable excess, creating a supply imbalance that no one saw coming and no one requested. Three pivotal dates trace the downward spiral. On March 27, 2025, USDA export data revealed that just 54 metric tons of American beef had been booked for delivery to China. This was a stunning freefall from the more than 2,000 tons per week shipped just 1 month prior. The catalyst? Beijing allowed hundreds of licenses for U.S. meat processing plants to expire overnight, a bureaucratic move with immediate and devastating commercial consequences. That 97% collapse sent shockwaves through the heart of the Midwest's packing industry. The message from China was as blunt as it was unmistakable: either find new markets for your beef or stop the trucks altogether. For many processors, the latter was the only viable option. Plants were soon overwhelmed with unsold inventory, cold storage facilities maxed out, and demurrage fees, the fines for delayed cargo, began stacking up rapidly. In a bid to cut losses, managers were forced to cancel slaughter schedules and freeze operations. American consumers felt the impact far quicker than any economic report could reflect. By February 28, 2025, the average cost of ground beef across U.S. cities had spiked by 43% compared to prices in early 2020. That means a family that once paid $8 for a simple taco night dinner now faces a price tag closer to $12. The brunt of this inflation is being borne by households in lower-income zip codes. areas where beef and pork have historically offered the best value per dollar on tight budgets. Public school lunch programs are scrambling to adapt, increasingly substituting beef with cheaper poultry options. But even this stopgap has its limits. The underlying supply of beef simply can't stretch to meet demand. The U.S. cattle herd is at its smallest since 1951, the result of years of droughts and forced herd culling. Feedlots are operating below capacity, replacement heifers are scarce, and even meat industry giants like Tyson Foods are hemorrhaging financially as they wait for ranchers to gradually rebuild their herds, a process that unfolds over 2 full spring cycles, not 2 fiscal quarters. Meanwhile, Canadian producers are reading this situation like a roadmap. Every container of beef rejected by China is a business opportunity for suppliers north of the 49th parallel. Meat processors in Manitoba are running overtime shifts to capitalize on this void. In Saskatchewan, rail yards are stacking refrigerated containers with precision, and importers in Japan are already locking in next year's contracts with premium payments, all in a bid to secure consistent beef supplies before the US gets a chance to recover or react. The longer the license freeze from Beijing continues, the more entrenched Canadian suppliers become on Asia's dinner tables. If the current embargo is renewed in July, market analysts estimate that the US could forfeit another $1 billion in beef exports by year's end. And if that happens, Washington may find the trade route permanently altered, beyond the reach of tariff negotiations or quick-fix diplomacy. What began as an export crisis has now become a full-blown consumer nightmare. During its May 5, 2025 investor presentation, Tyson Foods announced that its average beef prices had surged by 8.2% in the second quarter alone. That announcement spooked investors and sent the company's stock tumbling by 9% in a single trading day. The hard truth? Supermarkets either absorb these rising costs themselves or pass them directly to the shoppers. And the evidence of this economic squeeze is already arriving in plain sight. Tyson executives openly admitted that soaring cattle prices are placing a massive strain on profit margins. Consumers, reacting to price hikes, are switching en masse to more affordable poultry, further destabilizing the company's efforts to stage a financial turnaround. Tyson's CEO didn't mince words, calling the current market conditions the toughest we've ever seen, a stark statement that echoed through Wall Street. But what exactly is driving this relentless pressure? According to Reuters, the U.S. cattle herd has dwindled to its smallest size since 1951, leaving feedlots with no option but to outbid one another for every available steer. That fierce competition is pushing costs higher up the supply chain. The fallout is clearly reflected in the broader economy. In May, wholesale beef prices were 10.1% higher than the same time the previous year, making it the steepest increase among all staple proteins. Fast food franchises from Dallas to Detroit are quietly reducing burger patty sizes to manage costs. Meanwhile, grocery store managers are updating price tags weekly, if not daily, as they struggle to keep up with the volatility. School cafeterias across the U.S. are now replacing traditional taco beef with cheaper chicken, a sign of how strained local budgets have become. Financial officers in school districts simply can't keep pace with the rapid rise in food costs, which are outstripping the sluggish rate of federal reimbursements. At the same time, upscale diners in Tokyo and Seoul are slicing into premium steaks branded Canada Prime. Cuts of beef that used to ship from Seattle ports but are now rerouted through Canada. With every pound of meat diverted north of the 49th parallel, American store shelves grow emptier. Market analysts have issued clear warnings. If the ongoing drought in the U.S. persists and steep tariffs remain in place, holiday roasts could soon become rare luxury items instead of cherished seasonal staples. To put it bluntly, Washington's current trade policy has effectively morphed into a hidden grocery store tax, and that financial pressure is only mounting. And this is just the beginning. In the next segment, we'll examine how the collision of soybean prices, corn stockpiles, and feedlot economics may bring a total reckoning that makes today's sticker shock look minor in comparison. What we're seeing at the grocery store is just the first symptom of a much larger problem. As American lawmakers argue over tariffs and trade disputes, Canadian officials have already launched a strategic overhaul of North America's meat supply chain. In a late February 2025 update, Reuters reminded investors that traditionally, 75% of Canadian beef is exported to the US. But now, ranchers across Canada's prairie provinces are downsizing their herds instead of rebuilding them, deeply unsettled by Washington's looming threat of a 25% tariff at the border. That retreat is no coincidence. Canadian producers are refusing to invest in raising calves that could be barred from their most lucrative export market at any moment. In response, on March 7, 2025, Ottawa unveiled a massive $6.5 billion aid package aimed at reshaping the industry. It includes $1 billion Canadian dollars specifically allocated for developing cold storage hubs and temperature-controlled rail corridors, enabling Canadian meat to go straight to Asian markets without ever passing through the U.S. Already, subsidized steel and state-of-the-art freezer cars are lining up in Saskatchewan's rail yards. These units are now giving Japanese buyers a seamless, end-to-end shipping option that completely bypasses the U.S. Meanwhile, Washington's response has been austerity. On December 2, 2024, Tyson Foods announced it would close one of its beef and pork processing plants in Emporia, Kansas, eliminating over 800 jobs. It's a bleak sign that domestic demand is collapsing so quickly that meat packers are scaling back from 3 shifts a day to just 1 or none at all. Behind closed doors, industry insiders are whispering that if China continues to freeze import licenses through August, at least 4 more meat processing plants across the Midwest may shut down before Thanksgiving. That grim possibility is already shaking local agriculture. In Iowa, feedlots are turning away new cattle, while Minnesota corn producers are desperately searching for international buyers to prevent a grain glut. The contrast is glaring. Canada is investing in infrastructure to snap up U.S. export rejections, while America is shuttering plants, hoping that tariffs alone will somehow change the trade tide. If current policies don't change quickly, Canada is on track to completely dominate protein exports to the Pacific Rim. Meanwhile, U.S. ranchers might find their best cattle priced out of both global and local markets. Imagine the holiday season arriving, twinkling lights, festive music, and not a single product of USA label in the meat aisle. That's not some far-off hypothetical. That's the trajectory we're on. Canada has claimed the Asian market by acting quickly, scaling its infrastructure, and building global trust in its red and white brand. In contrast, Washington got mired in bureaucracy, let its cold storage network decay, and fired trade penalties that have backfired spectacularly. If Congress doesn't act fast to modernize safety standards, reinvest in logistics, and negotiate trade harmonization before the next buying season, the $200 billion American protein industry could watch a century-long reign evaporate in less than 12 months. Yet, there. Still one narrow escape route, a North America-Asia standards pact that could eliminate bureaucratic gridlock and move meat at Canadian speeds. The question now is, will the Stars and Stripes mount a comeback in time for your Friday night steak? Or will the maple leaf continue to set the global dinner table? Share your prediction below, your comment might just shape next week's headline.